Hello, and welcome to the Pro Series Conversations from CheckBox Pro. My name is Missy, and I'm the founder of CheckBox Pro, where we help school leaders become their most efficient and effective selves by matching them with ed-focused executive assistants. Each member of our team has over 10 years of experience in the education sphere, and though we may consider ourselves pros in some areas, we can't be an expert in every area. This is why we are excited to bring folks working in the education space to offer tools, tips, and insights to make the life of a school leader even more sustainable. Elizabeth Garcia is a people-first operations leader with a background in school leadership and K-12 nutrition, focused on building efficient systems that support team success. She began her career as a Teach for America Corps member in the Arkansas Delta, teaching elementary music, high school choir, and oral communications before transitioning into school leadership in Massachusetts. As a director of school operations at KIPP Academy Lynn Middle School, Elizabeth led an operations team supporting over 1,000 students and 200 staff members. She also managed the district's nutrition program, overseeing meal service for 2,200 students daily. Elizabeth supervised state compliance reviews, vendor selection, and ongoing staff training on food safety. During the COVID-19 pandemic, she led KIPP Lynn's emergency food service program, ensuring thousands of students and families received meals during a 15-month school closure. Elizabeth holds a master's in educational leadership and policy from Boston University and now serves as Associate Director of Operations in the Development Office at Massachusetts General Hospital. She lives on the North Shore of Massachusetts with her partner and their 2 cats. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, Missy. So nice to be here with you.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here with me today. I love a good ops person, and I'm really jealous that you have cats. My husband's allergic, and we don't get to partake in kitty cats anymore. Also, we will get into this in a second, but I love that you not only navigated this ops role pre-COVID, and then the heaviness of COVID-19, which so many obviously of school folks get in all the different areas. I didn't even think about nutrition and what that means during that time frame. And so that's just a totally other hurdle that you had to experience. So you're here, Elizabeth, because you're going to geek out with us a little bit about one specific program that is so ops driven. I mean, probably exclusively ops driven, which is a school's nutrition program and all that entails. Now, I gave our listeners a high level introduction of who you are. I would love for you to just introduce yourself a bit to our listeners, focusing specifically on why and how you found yourself in school ops, because when I read your bio, it's music, and that was kind of your teaching experience. And then ultimately why you agreed to come on to the show and geek out with me about the behind the scenes look and ops role in the school nutrition program. So without further ado.
Absolutely. So like you mentioned, I am a Teach for America Corps member, and I studied music in undergrad. Was very fortunate to be able to teach what I studied. But while I was teaching, I met phenomenal educators, and I would talk to them about this early educator experience we were having. And I would ask them, what was your day like? What's getting you excited? And they would talk about, oh, we read this amazing book. This kid had a breakthrough. Oh, I'm so excited about this curriculum I'm teaching. And when people would ask me that question, I would get excited about a fundraiser I was running. I would get excited about a tracking system that I had developed for my classroom. I was getting excited about school operations, and I was very fortunate to be at a school that had an operations team, so I could see that that was a pathway for me. So I taught at KIPP Delta Public Schools in Arkansas. And when I was ready to transition out of the classroom, an operations role was open in another KIPP school up here in Massachusetts. And I very much took it, not really knowing what I was getting into. But I served in that role for 6 years and did the school-based side of working with one phenomenal leadership team to lead our middle school, but also having this unique opportunity to lead a district-wide nutrition program. And that was one of my favorite parts of the role. And so the opportunity to come here and get into the weeds a little bit about what a program looks like, what some of the hallmarks are, is really exciting for me. Nutrition and food is something that I think we all have an entry point to. And so the opportunity to do that in a school was very meaningful to me. Food is a big way I take care of myself. It's how I show care to others. And I was very lucky to care for our 2,000 KIPPsters by helping make sure that they had a nutritious meal that hopefully they liked in front of them every day. We will get into menuing for that many kids.
I would say that's a big hurdle. That's a big hurdle. So for our listeners today, are you going to frame just, and also maybe for myself,
Mm-hmm.
are you going to be coming at it because you have done like the micro level, right? Like of a on-site school, and then you've had the unique opportunity of a district level nutrition program. Do you plan on kind of differentiating between those two, or honing in maybe on like the micro level of school-based nutrition program? Do you have an insight on that? Or is it kind of maybe?
A lot of nutrition things I think fall in that middle ground of how you're setting up your program has really direct implications for what you're on the ground day to day. But anytime you want me to get more micro, let me know.
Love it. Love it. That's great. Okay. Well, then I think our first question, I mean, jumping straight into it, and I think you framed it so nicely, and it is true. Like we all want to eat good food.
Yes,
all
we
like
do.
that is the
All
way to my
parents,
heart. And oh yeah, parents. I
all
mean,
parents want their kids to eat good food.
yeah, yeah. So, with that in mind, what does a strong nutrition program look like for schools and districts?
Yeah. So there's so many of these things in schools where we say, it depends, and you're going to define that. And I do think that applies here. I think there are lots of different ways that you can build a strong program, lots of different ways you can define success. And that's going to depend on whether you're starting from scratch. It's going to depend on what your current numbers are. I would say the two baseline factors that I would be looking at if you're assessing success in a nutrition program for the first time, whether at the school level or all the way up at the leadership level, are students eating the food? This sounds really basic and foundational, but we're going to get into, why is the school nutrition program critical? If the children are not eating the food, you're not getting any of those benefits. That's a sunk cost for your school as a business. That's sunk labor hours that you don't have because your staff is already stretched too thin. And most importantly, students aren't getting the benefit of those meals. The other thing I would be looking at is a program where there are barriers in between students and the food. We need to break those barriers down. So this can look like structural barriers, like do students who are too young need to put in a PIN number in order to get through the line? That's a barrier that we need to remove. Do students actually have enough time in the schedule? We are under such incredible curriculum demands right now as we try to build back learning after COVID. That's essential. Also, a kindergartner cannot eat a full meal in 20 minutes. It's physically impossible. And so those types of things on the very basic level, we want to be removing barriers and we want kids to eat the food. And this has all kinds of implications for what we're going to menu, how we're going to market, how we're going to engage parents. Those, I would say, are the two things that we're really looking at.
That's really interesting that you mentioned the time. So I have a first grader, and she is always just really frustrated at the fact that they have to be silent for the first 10 minutes of their lunch. And she goes, but the teachers get to talk. And I was like, right. Kids cannot multitask. Like you are not capable of multitasking. So they need to make sure that you are eating something. And if you are too busy chatting, then you won't eat. And so, and you're right. Like I'm always baffled at how long our dinners take at the house. Cause I have, a first grader and then I have a 4-year-old. And it's like, why are we still here? Why are we still here? I've gotten like seconds for myself. Like I am starting to clean up and then they're still there. So like that time schedule is super interesting. And then I think to your point, like, like if they're not eating the food to begin with, then that's, what is like, I like the idea that you mentioned like a sunk cost. So, I mean, I think you said, why it's important to have a strong nutrition program. Is there anything else, before maybe we dig into the next kind of segment of this about how do you build a program? But I want to make sure we've talked about what's important.
I would emphasize 3 things here. And depending on where people are entering this, some of these are going to be very obvious, but if you need to go to bat for your nutrition program, I would say being able to articulate these really builds a compelling case. One is all of the student-focused reasons that are very obvious if you have worked with kids, if you're a parent. These are the things that your vendor is going to be putting in their marketing. And it's everything we know to be true about outside of school to healthy food. It's the basic fact that if I'm hungry, I can't participate in what I'm doing, much less the 13-year-old, the 6-year-old, right? Then I would say we don't always think of nutrition from a school business perspective, but your nutrition program is probably vying for transportation as either your second or, oh my goodness.
Look at those balloons. For
Wow.
our listeners who don't watch the video, she just had balloons pop up on her screen. That's fun.
This is a hint for everyone that you should turn off your camera settings on your Mac. My mom has told me to do this like 7 times. Okay. Your nutrition program is either 2 or 3 in your budget in terms of pieces of the pie chart. And so you want to get that right, because if your second or third largest budget bucket starts to bleed, you are cutting into all of your smaller but really, really crucial programs. And then this final bucket is, like we mentioned earlier, this is an area where it is very easy to either get your families on board with a nice, solid win, or where you can lose them. And that, I think, is because so much of what happens in a school needs to be translated for families, not literally all the time, but explaining a really unique math curriculum to your average parent could be very challenging. Explaining the new phonics curriculum or the new culture initiative. There's a lot of technical barriers that we sometimes put in place, especially as school professionals. Whether or not my kid likes the food, nobody needs extra context on that. And so if you can invest families in your nutrition program and provide them a quality product, that is a huge way that you invest them in the community of your school.
Yeah, I've never have thought about that, because I don't know, I'm just like, eat, like it's a utility almost. But kids, like, yeah, that is one thing, like you hear all the time, like student body government, people are like running on like, we're going to get better food in here. And I'm like, I do remember that. Like I remember being in middle school and high school and like vying for like more options or whatever in our cafeterias. So I love that. That's a great, and you're right. It's like such an easy win for families. Yeah, that's true. It can be an easy win. It can be an easy win. I don't know if we're going to talk about this, and it might not. So if it's not the right time, let me know. I'm just trying to think through. Well, it might come up in our next question. I'm just trying to think about options, right? Like what you're kind of communicating right now is that like schools have an option, and just like what that selection process look like, and or like what are the options that they have available. So I mean, my next question is like, how do you build one from scratch, which may talk about vendor selection or your options for doing that. So yeah, maybe let's jump into like, how do you build a strong nutrition program from scratch?
So I'll actually start with that model piece that you're drawing out, because school nutrition can look so many different ways. And lots of people have strong, valid opinions on which ones are the best. If we go back to that core principle of, are the children eating the food, the model that is going to help meet that need and hit that target for your school, it could look a lot of different ways. So I would say like big bucket models that are run. One would be scratch cooking on site. So this is kind of your highest intensity from a staffing perspective. It's your highest intensity from a facilities perspective. In theory, it's also your highest payoff in terms of diversity you're able to offer in your menu, personalization, freshness. And there are really incredible organizations that help partner with schools to make this possible. I have not met a lot of folks in the charter sector that are doing this because, again, it's incredibly high intensity. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time there. I also did not run a scratch meal program. Every year someone came to me and was like, can we do scratch cooking? I was like, would you like to see the shoebox of a kitchen that we currently feed 1,000 children out of? So the program that I have seen as the most popular in the charter sector in particular is vended meals prepared offsite, heated on-site. So what does that mean? Vended meals, you have one primary vendor that you are building a strong relationship with, and they provide pretty much every item of food that is coming into your school. They provide your breakfasts, your lunches. If you're doing reimbursable snack, they provide your snack, they provide your milk, they provide your fruit, they provide your veg. All of it is coming from this vendor. They liaise with the individual ingredient vendors. They are also cooking all of the meals off site. So you don't need to have a big prep area. You don't need to have industrial ovens or mixers or those sorts of things. What you do need to have is really excellent refrigerator space, because the meals get delivered to you cold. And then when it is time for meal service, you heat them to temp and then serve them to the students. And typically there's two different primary ways this can look. They're either in family style, what you would think of as like catering trays that actually get served like lunch ladies in the movies, or individually packaged, sealed. Each meal is individually sealed. This I see as this is what I've seen the most. This is what I have the most experience in. And it's your middle ground. This is the reason it's so popular. It's middle intensity in terms of staffing. It does take a number of people hours to get all of those meals on trays into ovens. Those people do need training in food safety to make sure that you're not serving frozen chicken nuggets to the children. However, you need way less physical space and you need way fewer people than if you're doing scratch cooking. There might be some listeners who are thinking, I am starting a school with one grade. We are in a renovated church basement. What do you mean I need ovens? So for schools that are smaller or for schools that are younger, the other option is to work with a vended meal partner that will deliver the meals hot at the time of service. So one of the elementary schools in my district, when I was starting as the nutrition director, they did this because they were working in a very creative space that was still in the process of being converted. And this is the lowest intensity in terms of staffing and facilities, because someone picks the meals up from the vendor in a hot bag and immediately puts it in front of students. What I would say about that last option is that it is slightly higher risk on a day-to-day basis. And that's because if your vendor gets a flat tire with all of these hot meals on the way to your school, or if they have a facilities issue on their end, you do need a really ready to roll cold option that you can kind of pull out of your back pocket. But those are our three big buckets of model that schools can be choosing from, and you can provide nutritious, delicious, and compliant meals in all of those models.
I feel like yes, I have had, I guess I've only ever done vended meals, but we've had two different partners. Like, so we've gone with a true like vendor, and then we've had some where it was actually the district. Like I worked at a charter school, but they got to opt into like the district's programming, so they prepared it off and then they did deliver it to us for the most part in like catering trays. And then we had a food server that would come and dole it out.
Yes.
The most stressful thing, which you touched on, was if they do not show up on time.
Yep.
Right. Or like the delivery of even like the breakfast, right? It's like such a tight window for breakfast service. And then, then you've got it. I mean, but there's not a way around it. But you mentioned like a cold prep, and I'm trying to think, I'm like, I don't know if we had a back pocket, which I think is like a no brainer for an ops team. But talk to me a little bit about, what would a cold, and maybe storage wise, what does that look like? And is that something that the school does, or is that something that they like still have stored with that vendor to then, have somebody else easily bring? I don't know. Talk to me more about that.
Absolutely. So I would say there's a couple of different things at play anytime you're having a nutrition emergency. One very high level is ops teams are really good generally at planning for, here is what our normal day is going to look like. Let me develop these systems. Our truly excellent operations teams are also like, and if this thing happens, here is plan B, C, and Q. And before you serve a single child in your cafeteria or classroom or other random space that is available to you, because We feed kids in all kinds of places creatively. Thinking through what am I going to do in that situation, you cannot plan your way out of a nutrition emergency. And when they happen, it is not a sign that you have not done your job. Lovely, wonderful ops leaders. It's the fact that when you're dealing with food on this scale and there's people involved at this scale, it's gonna happen. So in terms of the actual logistics of a backup plan, you mentioned storage, and I think that's huge. So if you don't have enough storage in the place where you're actually heating your meals or in the place where you're serving meals delivered hot, how can you identify a compliant location to store backup cereal, backup compliant granola bars? When I say compliant, I'm talking about compliance with USDA food standards for the food service program, the National School Lunch Program, National School Breakfast Program. So how do you get your, I'm going to embarrass myself, I think it's 2 grams of grains, 2 ounces of grains. I'm out of practice already. I never got the meal pattern fully memorized because it's so complicated.
And it's probably ever changing.
I always had my chart. I was always running around with my chart being like, how many cups of carrots is that? But like, identify, here is a cereal bar or a type of cereal that my students enjoy eating that I can, compactly store in a closet that matches my health department's requirements, right? Mm-hmm. This could look like when your milk is delivered, you're typically getting milk that is within a pretty decent window, just like you would get at the grocery store. You don't buy milk that's going to expire tomorrow. You buy milk that's going to expire a week out, probably, using milk that maybe was delivered for a meal in the future, keeping enough on hand that you have enough for an emergency. You can do the same thing with fruit. We always had probably 2 to 3 crates of fruit extra in the walk-in fridge in my programs, because kids can always take it, and then you have backup if you have an emergency like this. The other thing is, outside of the what actually am I going to serve the children, is practicing how you're going to communicate that to hungry and upset children and to their teachers, who are, their kids are going to get held in that space. Mm-hmm. And so practicing, how do you explain to students, lunch isn't here yet, we will still feed you. Here's what you're going to do in the meantime. Let me give you an explicit thing to do and place to be. Put on your good teacher hat. But then also, following up with parents. Like, there was a mishap today. Your students still ate a meal. Here's what it was. Here's when they got it. Yeah. Something that I skipped is, we addressed a little bit of the breakfast piece. For lunch, this again goes back to storage and fridge space and freezer space. If you have freezing capacity and you can identify, again, something compact that meets your meal pattern. For us, this was those little frozen pizzas, which the children love. Yeah. Being able to freeze a large quantity of those in a small and compact space, and keeping maybe 100 of those on hand, so that, let's say the food comes, but the kids really like chicken nuggets and they eat more than you ordered, you can whip out 50 frozen pizzas for your last service of the day. Yeah.
Or I'm even thinking, to buy you time. So it's like the food's not there for that first lunch. So you whip out. So to your point, right? Like, you don't need to store enough for every student all the time. Usually, and again, these vendors and these partners, they want to get the food too just as much, because otherwise it's a sunk cost for them. Like, they're going to lose that food if they can't get it served that day. And so, so I think usually it's a mixed match of, okay, you mentioned, which I love this, like, this is the geeking out of ops piece that I'm just going to harp on for 1 second with you. And then we can kind of keep moving on. You mentioned, because I'm just imagining the amount that ops people, well, anybody, right, but has to remember. It's like, and you're like, oh, I'm out of practice. I'm like, how could you possibly have remembered the nutritional diagram? Like, there's no way. Like, I don't even remember what the food pyramid looks like anymore, if that's what they use. But just to your point, right, it's like, having that, like, an ops person needs to have a laminated card that they are able to walk around. And so if in a pinch, or if they just are doing their audit, which I think we'll kind of get here to in a second, right? Like, how do you assess something like this? But having that on hand to be able to to do that. Also, that communication plan, right? Preemptively coming up with a communication plan, creating that templated response, because it's not going to be the first and there won't be the last, like there's so many opportunities.
Yes.
So it's like draft that out. So that way you're not scrambling when the fiasco happens. You're like, nope, I already have this templated email and text and robocall that's going to go out to families that lets them know what happened. Yes, I have a canned response or a canned activity or a canned whatever. Here's what happens when X thing goes wrong. And so I think that's the ops piece that will help all of us type A ops folks operate at our best, is when we go, it's okay. Like things don't always happen perfectly. And and I've already planned for that. And I have things in which to make sure that it, that we check all the boxes. Love that. Okay. So vended meals, we can talk all day about even just the pros and cons and the breakdowns of that. But I think you did a really, a really lovely overview of, the preferred and pretty much the common one, right? Like you're going to, most folks, to your point, like have that vended meals where it's prepared off site and heated on site. Okay. So I'm an ops person. I've gotten the program up and running. Maybe I'm in my first year. Maybe I'm with a new partner. So I'm having to change. And how do I assess quality, efficiency, like all of those things? Like what am I doing as an ops person to make sure that it's running well?
So to know what you're assessing for, one thing I would plug is a strong contract with your vendor, so that as you are assessing quality, you and your vendor are using the same criteria. So when I was about halfway through my time running this program, we decided to run a request for proposal, RFP process, to switch vendors. And I had not written the original contract that we were operating under, but I was responsible for developing the new contract. And I went back to the old contract and I said, no wonder they were not providing us the communication that we expected. No wonder we saw these changes in quality. We had no way to hold them accountable because what they signed was so bare bones that they knew that we didn't have any recourse. And I don't say this to frame every interaction with your vendor as a legal battle in the making, because that's absolutely not the case. And that shared document of this is what we are committing to is an asset that you should take advantage of. And it's going to give you, hopefully, some of the clues on how you're assessing quality. You're going to be putting in your contract the total value of that contract. How many students are you feeding? How many meals? How many days? You can put in there our current, this is our current consumption numbers, and what is a goal that you're shooting towards with your vendor partner. You're going to include in there, what are our non-negotiables around the food products that you're going to serve? Are there any common food products that you actually are not allowing in your school for a variety of reasons? Are there protocols for allergens that are important to you that need to be met on the vendor's end? Really treating that proactively as a way to guarantee quality and assess quality on the back end. In terms of how you're assessing quality internally in the school, that goes back to how we've defined a strong program. So are the kids eating? Consumption data is the thing that I would encourage a nutrition ops director to be excited and obsessed about. Every day, whoever is actually serving the meals, sharing with you, here is the numbers that we hit. Here's how many students took a compliant meal that we're going to get reimbursed for, but also tying that to your menu. I think a lot of people talk about consumption numbers, but they talk about it divorced from the menu item. So if you tell me on Monday, the first graders ate 70 meals, and then the next day they ate 50 meals, and on Thursday they ate 85 meals, all that tells me is that the kids were like in different moods, which isn't what happened, because on Monday you served PB&J, and on Wednesday you served a new menu item that they weren't familiar with. And on Thursday, you served pizza. And so marrying your consumption data to your menu it's going to help drive towards that goal of, are the kids eating? Because you're going to start to see trends. You're going to start to see most children love these, what we would call American classics. And vendors are doing stuff every day to help make those options healthier. But maybe you're also going to see a surprise hit, like a noodle dish that you would not expect to be super popular. The kids love it and they start telling their friends about it, and you see this upward trajectory. That's your clue to order more. Maybe you've worked with your vendor. In our new contract that we set up with the new vendor, it was extremely important to us that the menu offerings reflected our student body, which was primarily Hispanic and Latinx. And so we wanted Dominican dishes, we wanted Central American dishes on the menu so students saw themselves reflected. And like you mentioned about the student government, that was something that came from our high school students. Is this way that we got them involved in the process. Well, it turns out that the vendors, the ingredients they had available to them, the constraints that they were working within in terms of the nutrition requirements of the federal government, those dishes didn't taste like the kids expected them to taste. And so the first couple tries, the kids looked at these food items and they were so excited. They were like, oh my God, conchas for breakfast. But then they ate them and they didn't get exactly what they expected. And so we needed to work with that vendor to say, within the framework that you are required to work in legally, and can we tweak something here? Can we tweak a texture? Kids are super texture sensitive. And, there was a burrito we offered one year. We're like, melted cheese, not a fan. Cheese sauce, slam dunk. And so, again, when you tie these numbers to the specifics of your menu, you're going to be able to make more informed decisions. Because what you don't want to do is say, I have 200 children that I am feeding, 80% of them eat, and so here is my standard number that I order every week. Because that on your low days is going to generate a lot of waste, which is not in line with your program goal of financial sustainability. And on your really popular days, you are inviting a disaster where you're not going to have enough. So getting really specific about those things is empowering all around.
Are schools required to, I feel like at ours, if they did not bring a a home lunch, then they had to get a school lunch.
So that is that's a school-based policy.
Okay.
If you are, reading the letter of the regulation, you may not force a child to take a school meal, but
sorry kids.
it's a very common school practice, particularly for younger students, where nobody wants to watch a kid sit there with nothing. And so that is absolutely not out of the ordinary. From a strict compliance perspective, kids need to choose what to take. And there is a provision in the regulation. So let me be very upfront about this. I'm a food regulation nerd. When I was in grad school, got into this and did some projects on this, and I think it's fascinating. And in this current climate of where we are for federal programs that we think are really valuable, I have a few you could call your reps about and say, let's keep them on the books. There is a provision in the school lunch and the school breakfast program called offer versus serve, which schools may or may not be familiar with. So in a service model, you decide what the meal is, you hand it to the child, and they sit down. The end. So if it's mac and cheese and chicken and green beans and an apple and a milk, that is what the kid gets. They go to sit down. The end. They get handed it. That's it. The government made they offered an alternative. It's called offer versus serve, which is a weird name, but that's what it's called. And essentially it says, here's the minimum that a kid needs to pick up. And as long as they meet the minimum, they get to choose what is a part of that minimum. So they have to take a protein, they have to take a grain, they need either a fruit or a vegetable, but they don't have to take both at lunch. So what offer versus serve does, it is higher lift on your staff because they need to be trained on what is compliant. That opens you up to a little bit of risk in a school review. When the state comes to evaluate your program, you need to make sure you're getting that right. But from a kid's eating, from a kid investment perspective, from a student choice perspective, when you put it back in the kids' hands of today, we have sun butter and jelly, but we also have this really cool chicken and rice dish, and we also have green beans, and we also have oranges, and we also have apples, and you get to decide what goes on your plate. That can be a little way to both reduce waste and get kids invested in what's in front of them.
Good to know. So before, because I'm wondering if maybe this next question is going to throw a whole big other kink in things, because it's, the CEP program or the community eligibility program might have added like regulations or things on there that then maybe dictate whether or not, some of those options. But before we get into that, you mentioned, monitoring assumption data on a daily basis, right? And tying that to your menu. Just like practically speaking, did you do that? Like, did you set up a tracker? What did that practically look like? If so, I'm an ops person and I'm needing to do my lunch rotation or my breakfast rotation, just practically, what did you build? What does that look like real quickly before we kind of get into like the CEP program?
Yes. So in my specific situation, and people can extrapolate this, what is applicable to their programs and not, I had incredible full-time staff in my kitchens. Oh my gosh, they were amazing and a wealth of knowledge. So they were actually taking the counts. So as kids went through the line, they were either we had a computer program that we used, or sometimes they were actually clicking on like an event clicker. And so every day there was a physical paper in the kitchen where they were recording what did we order? What did we actually put on the counter? What did we actually serve? So I could swing by the kitchen at any point during the day and read that piece of paper or have them text me a picture. I also, because I was based on one campus running ops full time, there was a designated ops leader at each campus that was supporting their on-site kitchen staff. And yes, we did build a tracker. We ended up using a tracker that was a part of our state reporting program anyways. So we're reducing double work. This is something that already has to get filled out at the end of the month. I said, don't wait till the end of the month, do it on Tuesdays. And so every week they are going into that tracker and one, getting ahead of a compliance task, but two, recording those numbers, starting to see trends. And then in their meetings with their on-site nutrition staff, that is where I expected them to put it together with their menu. So every week, the expectation was you're actually having that conversation of, wow, arroz con pollo was really high last week, but it was really low this week. Did something weird happen? Was anyone on a field trip? Or like, oh my gosh, the pizza numbers just keep going up. What are we going to do about it? So, and also I think norming that expectation up front with your nutrition staff of, I'm going to ask you for consumption numbers all the time. And when I ask you for that number, that's not a reflection of your performance that day. This is just a number we're all invested in. And so when you get that text from me, that's not a reason for your heart rate to go up. We're just all invested in that number. So shoot it over to me when you get it home.
Nice. Yeah. I love the alleviation of double work, right? Because you're right. Like those already have to get submitted. And so you might as well just like kill two birds with one stone. So love it. Okay. Well then, yeah, let's get into maybe the CEP program. So again, for those that may not know what that acronym is, it's the Community Eligibility Program. It's specifically, tied to nutrition, or free and reduced price lunch is another common, nomenclature. But yeah, what is it? Who does it apply to? Are there any like nuances that kind of maybe make this easier or probably make it more difficult when it comes to running a school nutrition program? Yeah. Just give us a high level overview of that and any details that might be important.
So the reason I'm so excited about CEP, it's one of my favorite federal programs, and it is really underutilized by schools. And so I would encourage, if your school qualifies, to dig into what that could look like for you, because I think in many cases, particularly in the communities that lots of charters are serving, this is a huge win for your community and for your staff. So the community eligibility provision allows you to serve free meals to every child in your school, even those that do not qualify for free reduced lunch, if the baseline percentage of students who do qualify meets a certain threshold. So we've been talking all about the in the school aspects of nutrition programming. We haven't even touched on the paperwork part and the reporting part. And there's that whole layer to things. And what I would say, if this is new to listeners, figure out who your bestie at your state nutrition office is and just bug them all the time, so that you can start to build your knowledge in that area and feel like you have someone to help you with these things. It's a maze, it's a mess, but it is what is required. Navigating that is what is required to provide meals that are subsidized to our students, which is really crucial, going back to that budgeting component. So what the CEP does is you first identify how many students in my school community already qualify for free reduced lunch. And that becomes your identified student percentage. And then you take that number and multiply it by 1.6. That's the magic number, 1.6. And if your resulting percentage is above 50, you have the option to serve free meals to every child in your school, even if in another model, they would need to pay for school meals. And the government will reimburse you at that calculated rate. So in my context, over 60% of the students in the schools that I led the program for qualified for free reduced lunch. So when we applied our 1.6 percentage, I had a school that was 100% covered under the CEP, which meant that every single meal we served was reimbursed at the free rate. At another school that I was leading, multiplied percentage came out to about 96%. And so the school did incur a small percentage of our costs, but the benefit to your program is you remove all of your qualifying paperwork for families. There is no more tracking down who owes this balance on their school meal account. There is no more going back and forth with families about their income. There is no more making sure that those forms are available in all the right places at just the right time so that they meet the deadline. If this is something that, again, if your school after that multiplier is up in the 80s or the 90s, which in a lot of our charter communities is probably the case, I would strongly encourage people to look into this. It's great on the administrative side, but also one of the things we identified as a strong program is barriers to kids. And so if there is no more kids whispering to each other, well, so-and-so doesn't have to pay, but I have school lunch money. There's no more, hey, Susie, someone's going to call your mom today, XYZ. There's no more following up with families about this completely transactional aspect of their kids' school experience. And so from a community engagement perspective, it is a massive, massive win.
Love that. I love that. Yeah, I didn't realize the multiplier. And I'm wondering now. So then just a little piggyback question before I let you go back to your day job. So if we go back to our options, so if we're using a vended meals partner, do they have to be a qualified, are there any added criteria for who you're able to partner with in order to be part of the CEP program? Does that question make sense? Am I asking it correctly? Okay.
So the CEP is a provision of the National School Lunch Program and the National School Breakfast Program. And so we are actually having this conversation assuming that people are complying with that federal program, which is not technically you could just incur cost and serve whatever you want to kids, but schools can't afford to do that. And so in order to get any type of federal reimbursement, you need to comply with those programs. And that's where all the nutrition requirements come in. So that's where the how many ounces of grain and how many cups of vegetables and the different types of vegetables over the week and the different types of fruit and the milk and the sodium, that's where the quote unquote meal pattern comes in. That's my little laminated sheet, right?
Meal pattern, yep.
So if you are already in compliance with the school lunch and breakfast program, then the CEP does not add any other food requirements. It's only about eligibility, which we love, not adding new requirements for something good.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because I just sometimes feel like, just there's so many programs and then you're like, oh, you're making this really difficult for me to utilize. Yep. Like you're creating a barrier now for schools to be able to access something that's going to be good for kids. And it maybe now makes it to where it's almost impossible to because I don't have the staff that can monitor it or fill it out, or I don't have the time, it's a lot. So that's good to know.
That is something that I would, as a encouragement to people who are new to this, if you're setting up a program for the first time, or if you're stepping into nutrition, yes, you are dealing with government bureaucracy. Unfortunately, if you're the leader of this program, if you're not the one serving the food to the children, it's paperwork, it's spreadsheets, it's deadlines, it's going to state webinars that were not designed to help you learn things. And that's the ticket to ride. And so getting in that headspace of, I can do this and I can also be a nutrition nerd, you got it.
Yeah. 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 And you get to, do something really good, and that you get to see the fruits of every single day. Pun intended, fruit. There we go. Awesome. Okay. Well, this was really helpful. I would, I'm going to link the community eligibility program to the show notes. Is there any other resource or anything else that you think I should point people to? I mean, you don't have to answer it now. You can always send it to me and I can add it to the episode notes. But honestly, I'm like, I need to find this nutrition pattern thing that I can just send to people, be like, laminate this, make it part of your portfolio that you walk around with. Yeah. But yeah, anything else off the top of your head that you think our listeners should know, or maybe something we missed early in the conversation that you're like, oh my goodness, Missy, I would be remiss not to tell people about it.
So I would say the USDA, again, this is on that technical compliance side. That's where you're going to find information about the CEP, but also all of the other requirements, like knowing your way around the USDA food service side of things. That's just going to pay off long term, especially when your boss comes to you and is like, can we serve this? Is it compliant? You're going to know where to go. If you are in a situation where you are needing to advocate for your school nutrition program, maybe to families, maybe to district leadership, maybe when you're having a staffing conversation, you can check out No Kid Hungry. It's a great resource. They're an advocacy organization to help improve access to nutritious food for students. And they have a lot of great resources for, again, making that case. And then if you are one of the schools that wants to get really wild and crazy and is curious about scratch cooking, the Chef Ann Foundation is a really unique organization that their mission is to help get scratch cooking into more schools and to make that not something schools do as a shot in the dark, but provide some structure and some supports for that. So if you're really psyched about that, the Chef Ann Foundation is someone to check out.
Love that. Love that. Okay. I will make sure I get those into our episode notes, and I'm going to be checking out the Chef Ann Foundation because that's really cool. I know. Yeah. I would love that. Okay. As we wrap up, I have one final question. I ask this of every guest, and it is in the spirit of my company's name. But what is one box, big or small, personal or professional, that you hope to check off today?
Today? Oh my goodness.
I like to keep it small. Small and achievable.
Small and achievable. I like that. I have a new recipe that I'm making for dinner in the spirit of our conversation. So I am going to try a new recipe and enjoy it with my partner.
Can you send me the recipe, and I'm gonna put it in our episode notes?
Yes,
good or bad. We'll let people know whether it was success.
I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful.
I love it. Yeah. Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing about nutrition and geeking out with me over it. And I know it is a pain point, but also a passion for a lot of ops people. So hopefully everybody got some tips that they can take with them, and just some food for thought. My pun game is on point.
It really is.
All right, listeners. Well, thank you so much for being here today. Check us out for the next one. Thank you all for listening to today's Pro Series conversation. Our team is always looking for more pros to learn from in the field of education. So if you have a recommendation for a future guest, or maybe you are the pro, then send us a note at info@checkboxpro.com.
And if you want to hear from more pros, then like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so that you don't miss an episode. And by doing so, this also helps more folks find our show. So take a moment to check that box off your list today.